Hi, Alex.
Hello.
How are you? I'm gonna ask you again.
My farm.
You did what to your arm?
I said I just just came in from my farm.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's what I thought you said.
My farm. That's what I was talking about.
I didn't know you had a farm.
Not the one, several.
You have several farms. Really? What do you farm there?
Animals, vegetables.
Minerals?
Only from the ground.
From the ground up. Well, sky minerals are quite rare. Not that they're non-existent, but they're
Sky's very big, full of goodness.
Yeah. Minerally goodness.
Those big grey batches of minerals that pour down the liquid minerals.
Yeah. Which you collect and bottle and sell to unsuspecting middle-class teetotalers as expensive water, I expect.
Aye. Or as I like to call them, idiots.
Idiots, yeah. Well, that sounds like a productive day all in all. So you're having a good lockdown?
Yeah, I mean...
Lockdown 2? Electric
pretty
Boogaloo?
Same as usual, same as the first.
Yeah?
Apart from this time I have a better PC, so...
That's a result.
Yeah.
So you're getting lots of gaming done?
Yeah, fair amount, like with my brother and sister and friends, and through too many servers.
Too many servers.
I've given up, and I've eventually made folder groups now for my servers.
That's one approach.
And
other people I know just delete servers. But
I mean, I like the servers. They're still useful for finding out information. It's just properly sorting them, which I imagine is tougher for the older generation.
Or filing. Electronic filing.
Well, we invented folders and subfolders, Sonny Jim.
Can I put my computer in the filing cabinet? Does that work?
I expect it does. Depends what you want to achieve, doesn't it? Like, if you want to...
I'm not sure what you'd achieve with that.
Well, if you
want
a very
heavy filing cabinet.
I'm getting too many Discord notifications, so they just rip your PC out of its power supply and put it in a filing cabinet, and then problem solved. No more Discord notifications, or Discord, or computer, or anything. But who knows?
I mean, you've got a nice filing cabinet still.
Yeah, it does rather depend on the size of your filing cabinet and the size of your computer, I suppose.
Yeah, well, yeah.
But we're getting very sidetracked now. There is a reason why I'm speaking to you this evening. I've contacted your parents, and it was about a message you sent to.
Oh.
Yes. No.
I'm having flashbacks.
A very long and thorough message.
Yeah, I thought. I mean, I didn't want to just leave and then be not really give you any feedback or anything, or just be like, see ya, I'm busier, I can't join, or whatever. Just lie or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, which is often the easiest thing to do, isn't it? Although, people rarely... Well, because we are recording this conversation, and I hope there's a good chance that you'll approve its content and allow me to share it with other people. It depends how this conversation goes, I suppose.
Yeah.
You, sir, are a liar. You're a liar and a vagabond, and I
hate your guts.
Let it be known, listeners, that Alex is a baddie.
What's your plans with Castell anyway? Is he going to be like an NPC now, or?
Right. Well, let me just provide some background for the benefit of any potential future listeners, if there are any. The reason I have summoned Alex here to... I keep whistling. How is that happening? The reason I've summoned Alex here is because I'm running a game of Pariah on the Atelier Discord. And
is that English?
Yeah. And recently, well, actually on the 7th of November, so 13 days ago, sent me a message to say why you wouldn't be coming for the regular sessions anymore, which was very comprehensive and very useful for me as a games master. And I think what you were alluding to earlier is like quite often when we play in online games, sometimes if things aren't working out, we have a tendency, all of us are, well, I don't know, other people might do this differently, but I think most people just kind of drift away and go, oh, sorry, like you just said, like, I'm a bit busier now. So it was really cool to get some, to get feedback. And then I thought, well, it'd be cool just to chat to you about it, really, and see what comes out of that conversation. Yeah. And I appreciate it because you're giving up some of your time to do that.
I'm trying not to go too off topic and make too many jokes.
It's up to you. Say what you want. So then, so your character was Quick is the Gazelle, and you just asked. Yeah. Now you've left your game. What my plans are for him?
Yeah.
That's a good question. And so I guess
because you did a good Gazelle voice, didn't you?
It wasn't bad. Yeah, it wasn't as good as your Gazelle voice.
I mean, naturally, I'd hope so.
I mean, over time,
you'll get there.
It could become the canon Gazelle voice, but it's difficult with that voice actually because it's quite similar to, like, I don't know. I think I've got like maybe 4, perhaps 5 NPC voices, and it's fairly close to one of the ones I do. So I might need to expand my range.
Just make him like a bit more annoying and whiny sounding. I'm sure it'll go fine.
Well, this is the thing. So one of the things you mentioned about you felt like the character was becoming a bit of a grumpy old guy and a pantomime villain.
Yeah, I feel like...
So we'll start there. We could start there because that kind of comes away from his voice a little bit.
It does, yeah. It was certainly my plan to begin with to have Gazelle as like a sort of grumpy old guy who was like sort of set in his ways, and from like the outset he just seemed like quite hostile, quite hard for other players to deal with, I suppose. But I sort of like intended him to space out from there to be like, oh, he's like this because he's obviously suffered like quite a lot of loss in his past, where he feels like he hasn't done enough to stop, actions that he's deemed as foolish, which have resulted in people's deaths or maiming.
Well, there was
a bit like with
go on. A bit like a lobster guy, which we'll talk about in a second. Because one of the running themes, I think, early on, because I think your first game we played, it was you and Louis, like Gen 2K, and it was just the two of you, kind of like, and it was meeting up and discovering the environment and a few just random encounters along the way.
Still an amazing session for sure.
Yeah, it was really good fun actually. That was a really
Louis is very, very enjoyable to play with. Definitely,
he's a good GM as well actually. And if you go on to YouTube, he's done a couple of things for Garblag. Don't know if you've seen his Coriolis game that he does, or Coriolis.
I haven't had time lately. I've just been doing so many other stuff with my own servers and hanging out with my gaming friends that I haven't really had a huge amount of time to spend on Garblag. Or like I pop in, I gave that recommendation to the music bundle on Humble Bundle. Did you see that? Where you can get like a whole bunch of royalty-free music. Yeah, it's really good. And I want to watch the is it Vaesen stuff where it's like Nordic?
Vesen, I think is the pronunciation. That how they've been saying it. I don't know if it's correct or not.
It's wrong.
It's a Swedish word. That was pretty fun. I played in a few games, but my job kind of went really mental, so I had to drop out of that for a bit. It's less mental now. The opposite has kind of happened, but I know it's kind of hard. Like I generally will just listen in on sort of stream shows and actual plays when I'm doing other stuff, so I don't often give them my full attention.
I used to watch them when I played stuff like Elite Dangerous, something where I can like just have it on in the background and do something else mindless at the same time. Yeah.
I mean, I'd like to say do something mindless, but it's often trying to do my job, which is supposed to require my full attention. So I probably should say less about that. But we got onto this subject because we were just saying about you and Louis played in that first session together, and from there, kind of a running thing was when you encountered new people when Gazelle encountered new people, was being fairly wary, and also when joining up with new people, then being quite wary about letting new people into the fold. And actually, in fairness, some of the things that occurred during play were like meeting a ghoul child and inviting her into the group, going and spending the night in what was known to be a ghoul lair, or at very least a cannibal lair, where
To be fair to Undecided over the Yellow One, I think some of that was pretty fair, because I think she has some sort of backstory thing to why she's like taking care of the child, which I think is completely reasonable.
Yeah.
Like from my out character perspective.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think there's one thing is when you're playing as characters, is there's often there can be a bit of tension between the character doing the right thing, doing the right thing as players, and if you get what I mean, like for the party as a whole, and then also sort of doing it for the story kind of thing, and often there's a good middle ground there, isn't there? Yeah, I mean it depends on the game, doesn't it? Like I think that you're running, and I think
and how well you know the other players too, I suppose.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it, and finding that balance. I mean the tradition of like old school gaming is it's mainly just about the game and seeing what else happens as a result of playing. I think like you just go out and you just do what your characters would do to survive, and then sort of let your character develop from that and see what emerges, what story just comes out of that, right?
Yeah, and that's one of the best things about making a character, is just the development of that character.
Yeah.
And seeing how they change within the world and from other people's actions as well.
Yeah.
For me, that is.
Yeah. I think for me, yes and no. I think like I try in games that I play, I try and start with a fairly blank slate and let the character be shaped a bit by the events, and a part of that as well is like I like to play in games that are fairly high risk, so if I do end up losing my character, then I don't feel too depressed, unless I've grown attached to them for a while. But I think that's quite different to like sort of how games really develop now, especially with live stream games where it's usually quite rare for a character to die, and there's quite I
probably shouldn't give my opinions on a lot of this.
Yeah, well,
I feel like,
what do you think about that?
Well, I feel like a lot of it is like when your characters are effectively part of your brand and potentially your merchandise. The willingness you'll have to kill them off is realistically going to be quite small. Yeah.
Well, sure. I mean, and that's definitely true for like the bigger streams and stuff.
Yeah, I don't think Garblag really do it, but...
Well, I mean, Garblag have got like a couple of long-running campaigns, haven't they? Like Flint and Steel, principally. But in the main...
they've had characters die off before as well, haven't they?
Yeah. I'm not too familiar with Flint and Steel, but definitely in the more recent short-run things they've done, people die all the time. Especially in all the free league games I've been playing recently, like the Alien game and the Mutant
Mothership.
And Mothership, of course, yeah. But yeah, like, and what's your like you play quite a lot of Warhammer Fantasy roleplay, right? And that's quite a lethal. Most editions of that.
Yeah. I finished up my campaign like a few months back.
Yeah.
But yeah, that got to like that ended with one of the players who was like a wizard who came from being like a scout elf to becoming like a wizard. He died, like getting melted by like a magical staff in an attempt to stop like a greater demon that they'd failed to stop being summoned. Who else died?
See, that's kind of epic, and one of the things I like about character death can be heroic, dramatic, or just kind of pathetic. So in any case, it's always like quite. I think it's an enjoyable thing. Not that.
I think a lot of players undervalue character death.
Yeah.
In the fact that the effect it can have on the party, on the world, on like how much you actually might enjoy your character getting some form of ending.
Yeah. Yeah. Because
one of the things I despise is like having a character that is effectively just in the void, and you can be like, oh well, in my head they do this and this happens, but actually having like an ending that you played out with your friends or people is I find quite nice.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So I guess like after a campaign, and you kind of might run through a what are they up to now kind of thing in your head. It's not as satisfying as being sat around a table and it coming out as a consequence.
Yeah, and everyone just playing their characters and it sort of progressing naturally, and not just being like afterwards, just being like, okay, well this is what's happened, and it feels a bit hollow, even if it's like completely in character to what your character would do. If you found out, oh, my character, who was like some farmer dude, has become a lord, even if like they were working towards that through the campaign. Like, just getting there from, like, just it being decided, like, after the end of the campaign, and actually getting there within the campaign, it's going to provide you two completely different feelings.
Definitely, because it's certainly like achieving something within a campaign is a reward. It's like a process you go through. There's some setbacks along the way. You solve some problems with support from your fellow players or in-game from the characters or whatever, and then you achieve some success. That's obviously going to be much more satisfying than, okay, so you killed the kobold. 20 years later, you become the king. The end. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, that was like a crazy example, but yeah.
Yeah, but sure. Yeah, but it's good to exaggerate. It makes the things more obvious. I was just gonna get things a little bit back. So talking back about Gazelle, your character in the PARIAH game. So one thing you mentioned was about Spotlight, and you felt that maybe that cast, because of the attention that Gazelle was getting in game, as a consequence of attention you were getting in the game, that he kind of became more pantomime villain, I think you said. And then the other thing was you were concerned that you also were not letting other people bring their characters to the fore as a consequence.
Yeah, it definitely felt like I'd get deferred to a little bit, or quite a bit, as like, even though I hadn't I wasn't like by any means like the longest running player, I was there quite frequently and reliably, I want to say.
Yeah, that's probably true. Yeah, for sure.
For like the segment that I played in.
Yeah, definitely.
And it sort of just became like, refer to the one who was there in the previous session sort of thing, and it'd be like, I'd like meet new people, have to do it like how Gazelle treats new people, and it'd be like this constant like pantomime sort of villainy, and it's like, how do I grow out of this?
Yeah.
It was like, I always thought of it like, have you ever seen Avatar: The Last Airbender?
No, but I'm sure people listening, if we play this to listeners, will have. I'm aware of it.
Is it one of those Japanese cartoons?
It's actually American, I think. But,
one of those American cartoons.
Yeah, with Japanese influences, I imagine. But anyway, there's a character in there called Uncle Ira, and like in the first season, he's like just a funny old guy who drinks tea all the time and eats food all the time, like the classic sort of idiot fat character, or whatever.
Yeah.
And he
Kind of
transforms into this sort of like throughout the seasons into like this wise man who suffered a lot of loss, like his well, maybe I shouldn't say that because if you plan to watch it, but he's got
spoilers.
he has deep parts of his character which explains his actions, which explains why he's like not so interested in finding the Avatar in the first season, why he's more interested like in his nephew who's like being banished, in him finding really himself to a degree. But in the first season, that comes off as, haha, fat uncle messing around looking for, like, tiles and tea and, playing musical instruments.
Yeah, I guess, like, character development is an important part of any kind of show that's enjoyable, isn't it? You want to see people grow and move forward, and just another series that you may have watched. I was watching Cobra Kai on Netflix, and it was amusing and fun because of the nostalgia kind of element for people of my age who would have watched Karate Kid in the 1980s. But what is frustrating about it is actually after a couple of seasons there's not really any serious development, and the characters always kind of going back to the same positions, and it just becomes a bit silly. Like they do become one-dimensional.
I just find that aggravating whenever I see that.
Yeah.
It's just annoying. It's like you could have written this so much better, and instead we've got like it makes sense for some things like certain cartoons, but I just find it aggravating in general.
Yeah, and of course, like in play, in role play, in RPGs, tabletop RPGs. I should say like a fourth word then. In play, in role-playing games, in tabletop role-playing games.
D&D style role-playing games.
Yeah, in Dungeons and Dragons and associated or aligned. Anyway, in such collaborative storytelling environments, there's not like often. Well, I guess there are in some systems. There's not often like an overarching kind of story arc or character development arc that decides how things are going to turn out. Apart from sometimes people have that in their heads, where they'd like to see the character end up. So when you have, like you're saying, like when you have like players who are new to the character, and then you're kind of reintroducing yourself as a character anew, like then it is possible to get stuck into a certain behaviour which becomes archetypal, becomes kind of one-dimensional, whatever, right?
Yeah, and it becomes quite tiring to play.
Yeah. So what do you think, like if you've got a kind of open table setup, what would be a way to overcome that? Do you see one, or?
Well, I think part of it was the fact that we were getting like new people every session, or even if they weren't, not it wasn't like, I feel like my character grew when we had more like frequent players who could reliably turn up. Like I feel like my character grew when I was with Undecided over the yellow one. We had like 3-4 sessions. Yeah. It sounds weird, but even though I didn't play a lot of sessions with Gen 2K, I thought I just really enjoyed that first session as well. And what was it? Wooded one or something like that.
Earnestly Wooded.
Yeah, I had quite all those sessions as well were very enjoyable, and that felt like I wasn't being sort of like typecasted into something necessarily because there wasn't someone else there as well, I guess. But it was more like, it just felt like because there was this constant cycle of people that it'd be like I had to stick into series 1 of Gazelle forever, and that wasn't a happy thought.
Sure.
Without me being like just rewriting it all.
Yeah.
And I didn't particularly want to do that either because I like Gazelle and I enjoyed like a lot of the aspects of the games that we played. Like I liked the themes of the Many-Mouthed King. I liked the spirits aspects of stuff. I liked the world. I liked the undead place that we went to. I thought all that was, pretty cool.
Just put that aside for a bit, and then talking about character development in a mechanical way. So you sort of mentioned, because there's like this classless, levelless setup. About a couple of things. Yeah, there's a lot of there was a lot of feedback about this, and right. So let's start with random stats, and your character is largely defined by the quality of the stats that you roll up at the start. And I feel. Yeah, go on.
I think I firstly want to say is I hadn't played D&D First Edition at all before I joined in on PARIAH, and through playing PARIAH, I learned that I don't really like D&D First Edition all that much.
Oh, great! I'm happy to have been of service to you.
I mean,
my life's work. So, yeah.
I feel like people who are nostalgic about it remember all the good aspects. It's not as forgiving, perhaps, as later D&D. Not that I play much D&D. I've played a little bit of it.
Yeah.
But it's like D&D 5e is very simple, it's very intuitive, and it's quite forgiving, realistically. Once you get past the beginning levels, where it's you might just die from being random hit.
Yeah, without diverging into 5e too much, but I think it definitely is forgiving after the first couple of levels. It's something statistically, it is quite easy to die early on in that game, but also it's more likely you're only likely to die if there's a TPK scenario, which is kind of weird. Whereas in
that is, I feel like that's somewhat defined by the GM though as well.
For sure.
And how they how much they know the system so they can adjust it, and how nasty they want their world to be.
Because one of the things people who are more accustomed to first edition, second edition, and original D&D and basic and all the retro clones of those editions are that kind of even in 5e, which kind of nerfs the characters a little bit compared to third edition or whatever and Pathfinder. There's still this kind of idea that you're playing almost as a sort of superhero, especially when you get up to the higher levels. Whereas, in BX, for example, you're really just playing random men and women who just happen to have survived for longer than their comrades. And I think that's the attraction for a lot of people. I kind of like that, that you can just be there and you can disable a trap or fail to disable a trap, fail a save, and that's it. Your character you've been running for a year is dead, just in a stinking hole in the ground, holding a.
I certainly like less than D&D 5e, because I play Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, which is great.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I don't know, I feel it was culminations of problems with first edition. One, characters vary so wildly in terms of their power skill, as we want to rank it overall. I think I gave the example that my character Gazelle, to get to the point to where Undecided is currently within the game, would take me probably an over exaggeration at that point, but I would say something a good 20 to 30 sessions.
Well, that was an interesting take, because I think that is probably true if you're using the attributes as a measure of parity. If you're saying she has these stats, and after 20 or 30 sessions I'll have the same stats, and therefore I'll be the same, because the stats aren't, attributes aren't the only way that you grow. And one of the things I was trying to emphasize in game is that the characters develop by the bonds they make with the spirits, the bonds they make with the human communities, the allies and relationships they build make them stronger. And
how successful would you say that has been?
Well, I think one of the probably in the initial run, like the first, like just before you joined, it was a little bit bitty because we had like a nice setup with like one particular ally in the big hive, like the weird alien ant queen. But then there was kind of a quite a large chunk of the players dropped out because they felt it was like too demanding. It was like, which is a thing. Like, go, oh yeah, I don't mind playing, but I don't want to play every week. It kind of makes me like, oh, you don't have to. And then they just go, well, I think you do, and I don't want to play every week, so I'm not going to play at all. And then it feels a bit depressing. I think like
yeah, I mean, someone saying like I don't realistically want to play it anymore this much is, I think no matter what I was going to say, it was going to be a bit.
Oh no, I wasn't referring to you directly then, and in fact now I've just realised that you did say that as well. Arsehole. I think like
I'm sorry.
One of the things that came out of like the session, I think, was it the last session you played where you did the trip to the land of the dead, and then Semiurge's character came back with a sharpened stick which had been holding the head of his ancestor in the land of the dead. And this just saying that just makes me, what a cool game this is. But anyway, so he brings this stick, it comes back with him to the physical world, and this becomes the foundation of the ancestral shrine of the pariahs. So they've got like a focal point, and so I'm developing with like the players now this idea of having like a kind of collective power source, like a hit dice pool, but for everybody, from which they can draw on like skills and magic and re-rolls and that kind of thing. And as the band gets bigger, and not just in terms of party members, but like things like elders and youths and stuff, like that power level goes up as well. And as people die, if they're accorded proper funerary rites, they contribute to that source. So that's kind of the idea of like the community building aspect of it. It's
that does sound cool, and I don't think I'd criticize like the community growth. I think you can clearly see that a town's village is either becoming more secure or growing in strength since when Gazelle at least first arrived. They're forging bonds with other places. There was the Forest clan that they fought off, right?
Yeah.
And I certainly wouldn't argue that there's been no, development in the world. There definitely has. But I feel like my critique was more about individual development between different people as well, and that's what I didn't like about D&D First Edition.
Because go on. No, I was just going to say, because the other thing is that when you quite often you do end up with weak characters in old school games, because you just roll a set of dice and then you accept the numbers for your attributes. And for this game, so I've set up that character generator, and of course there's always the risk that people can just click until they get one they like, and then go, oh look, I've got a 8 hit dice. A D8 hit dice, super strong, super skillful, and I'm not going to call anyone out on that. I like to have characters with weaknesses personally, because it means that I can look for other ways. And one of the things about old school games is using, common sense and ingenuity to overcome problems, rather than just relying on like brute forcing dice rolls with bonuses and stuff. So it's like although that's enjoyable as well, isn't it? We all like to have like a fighter that can hit regularly and dish out hardcore damage, or a spellcaster. Go on.
I'd argue that Gazelle was like common sense in human form.
Well, like when he hid under the tree.
Like, you want me to go down into the den full of undead things? No.
Yeah.
And it was like everyone else, let's go in.
Yeah. Well, I think that was like, they were going, that's where the adventure is.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, I'm thinking my character is not going to go into this hole of stinking death. Like, literally, the description is like, you can smell rotting corpses as soon as you enter this cave beneath a dead tree, being led by a ghoul girl. So, yeah.
And it was like, I feel like there's truth in that. I do like weak characters, and especially like they grow.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's like a cut-off point where it's like, you can have weak characters, and then you can like, if your group was like carrying around some like extra character who's basically, you know, they become like the mascot or the little plaything.
Like the amusing sidekick kind of thing.
Yeah, like perhaps like a little goblin character or something.
And there's a time and a place, and sometimes that can be fun to play those characters, and sometimes you can just get a bit like, I
still want to see the goblin grow, though. To be fair, and I don't think it's quite hard for the person if there was a person playing the goblin, I think they'd find it quite hard to have fun.
I agree. I think though that one of the things that came out of the stuff that Gazelle was doing is that in terms of development, he acquired like 2 rituals as a consequence of his negotiating with the village when he went there with Garnish and also like the flute playing that won the boat. But like the rituals were quite useful, and had the power to, and that's an angle at which, you know, you started a character that had like a kind of a slightly silly binding ritual to kind of like a marriage ceremony, but actually there was some benefit to that as well, because there's like the ritual is kind of you bind 2 people as like a, you know,
I mean, if Gentle had ever come back, I would definitely have done it with him, for sure.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because there's this fact that it's kind of, it creates a telepathic bond, and you can share your hit points with each other because you're kind of united as your spirits are combined, that kind of thing. And then the 2 additional rituals you picked up were useful, like the conjuring a spirit from the beyond could be quite a powerful thing to use, and it's just like a way of you know. So I like to think that the characters can develop in that way, because anyone can learn how to do magic. It's not like you have to be a special sorcerer bloodline or Harry Potter or whatever. It's just like you pick up stuff by learning, like in, you know, and some people are going to be better than others, but, you know, I think there's growth there. And it's a pity that also that one of the things about Gazelle is that go on. What?
I was just remembered how I used the ritual and then took everyone to the land of the dead, and everyone was like, "So what do we do now, Gazelle?" And I was like, no idea.
And of course, Gazelle had been inflicted by, he'd been mortally wounded by the ghoul as well. So there was that possibility of that manifesting in peculiar ways as well. Like if he did ever submit to the hunger and indulged in human flesh, again, he might develop some other weird ghoul trait, something like that, which could be a negative thing, but could also be beneficial as well. Like, But then it's like, you know, so I like those
It probably would be a negative thing.
Well, you know, like ability to, like, some stats could improve, like gain claw attacks or bites. There's a whole list of things, and it's only once you know, but stuff like all your hair falling out and your skin turning grey would be bad. But
I mean, not too bad. He already looks some to that, doesn't he?
It's a pretty good looking fella for an older guy, I thought. Like that.
Yeah.
That's pretty good software. So we've been talking for quite a bit. I appreciate this, but have you got time just to quickly, you wanted to mention something about the skills as well, or?
All right, yeah, skills. I just felt like skills sort of just varied wildly in terms of how strong they were within at least the campaign we played. Like, I gave the example of my language skill, which would be like, can I use this language somehow? Like, no, because it's not written language. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, so, yeah, I mean, I think a part of that, my main fault is that I really didn't actually want literacy to be really very common at all, because in my head, like, literacy was something that was like only select members in the biggest, like, developed settlements would have, you know, like priests in ancient cities, that kind of thing, you know. And so for a hunter, no. What I'm getting at,
I'm not sure how true that would be in terms of like a unified language, definitely. But I think villages would have had their own meanings and writings.
Well, in Neolithic times, like, there's not really much evidence of that we have on record, so it's hard to kind of speculate. And if we look forward, if we look back at like, if we look at more recent history, with like before the Reformation, like rates of literacy were very low in like medieval Britain, for example.
I think it's probably just like drawings to letters to
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, the point is that the kind of campaign I wanted to create was one where literacy was kind of rare and magical, and using words was a form of almost something magical, because that was just like the kind of a design goal, and then the language idea was just not really. It wasn't something I developed very well. So it's this idea that as you move further and further away from your place of origin, like, there's a common language, but it just gets weirder and weirder until you go really far, and it's just you don't understand it, you know, unless you're particularly skilled. It's not like you're skilled in a language, but in languages generally. But I get that's my fault for not really developing that in a cogent kind of way, I think.
I think partially it is, but I still think there's like a huge discrepancy between like some of the skills. I feel like I had drinking as well, like 3 lots into drinking, and I tried using drinking. Like, I drank fly's blood.
That could have, if you'd made that roll, I would have given you superpowers. I promise you, you would have gained the power of the robber fly. Like, I was like, you're doing something weird. I like it. I'm going to let the dice decide, and that was the dice didn't fall for you.
No,
but it created like a memorable scene as well. It was
I enjoyed that, but it was like throughout that time, it was like me struggling to use any of my skills apart from performance or whatever it was, music instrument.
Musical instrument. Yeah, because you played. You played, and it was useful on 2 kind of key occasions in placating the lake spirit and getting the boat.
There was other skills as well, like spirit related skills and stuff like that, and like even just like basic skills like perhaps running or climbing, which I think would be like vastly superior to something like drinking language or I don't know. Yeah,
but I mean the thing is like everyone. The thing is like having a running skill doesn't mean you can run. It just means that you can run a little bit better. Like you're rolling a D8 instead of a D6. It's still quite swingy. So it's like...
But having that constantly is like, realistically...
But how often...
when you have to beam it into every combat, you're actually using that bonus like a lot. So it becomes
the best one is definitely sort of like attack bonuses, that kind of thing, for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Like, I agree with you there. But I think it's about what you do with it, and I left like the skills very vague because I was hoping people would just like, and I guess the thing is in here it's like I did the cardinal thing of someone going, can I use my skill to try this, and I just went, no, you can't use language because it's not written language, and I do feel bad about that because it kind of like it could have meant something useful for your guy.
I don't think that was like inherently bad though. I feel like obviously it's like you want people to engage with the world with their skills, but if their skill doesn't fit, then it makes sense to say no. And other people did have like literacy, right? I think someone else had.
Well, there was a fuck up there actually as well, because Earnestly Wooded, we thought he had literacy, but it turned out he actually had language as well. So he just made the same mistake as you. But said, "Oh, I think my character's there." I went, "Oh, okay, sure." And then, so that was like a little bit of additional salt.
Me there, angry.
I
didn't even know at the time.
But I mean,
I feel like
the thing is,
finding
finding that
my idea.
Huh?
No, continue.
No, I was just going to say, like, Stephen, who's, Tinhead Ned on the server, he posted something the other week and from his 5e game, which really made me laugh. And it was something like about players trying to use the wrong skills in situations. And it was just hilarious because it was like, I think it was something like, can I use disguise on a cat or something like that? I'm going to try and find it now.
That does sort of depend on what campaign you're running, but I think there is some value to letting people at least attempt something that they're not necessarily trained in.
Oh god, it's better than that. It says the first one was, I tried to intimidate the rats, which is great, but actually kind of like with our wild animals, I guess like, stamping your feet and shouting can be effective. But the second one was, can I use my calligraphy kit to look more like a cat? I think it was brilliant.
I mean, would it be effective at all?
You definitely look more like a cat than you did before, but you don't look... if there's a sliding scale, you are now 5% more feline, but you're still like, 95% human.
Yeah.
You
side effect includes you do look like an idiot now, though, as well.
Just the word cat written in really elaborate script on your forehead. And whiskers.
I was thinking of like the face paint you get at like zoos and stuff. Hello, I'm a cat. Meow.
Like that, like the musical Cats, the terrifying musical. Yeah. Yeah.
What did you think of the? I saw the idea that I had was like you'd have like, sort of like the primary skills, which are like the ones that we're talking about, which are like higher in power, for example, with to do with like perhaps performance or running and jumping and all that sort of stuff. And then like the secondaries, which is like, perhaps pottery or crafting or language, writing, drinking, that sort of stuff. And you could potentially even gain it from like events that happen in the village, like festivals and from your background of just doing certain things. It wasn't necessarily taking away from the main ones. Basically, it was just added flavor for your background, and so you could still do like stuff like that.
Yeah, I think I'm like in two minds about that because I kind of liked it. I think one of the things that like I wanted to have was like you've got like your core skills which are tied to your core attribute, like your highest attribute, and then you have secondary skills which just pop up as well. And in your case, in Little is the Little is the Gazelle. Do we change to Quick is the Gazelle? I'm getting confused now.
Little is the Gazelle, yeah.
Quick is much better. But sorry, I keep saying.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I've got a lot of corrections to do now. It was tied to charisma, and one of the charisma-related skills was drinking, and somehow you came out with all of it invested in that, and performance as well. So I think that's kind of like I guess like drinking can be quite a silly skill, but then if you're a charisma-based character, okay. So let me put another question to you: how do you feel about running more than one character in a campaign? And not necessarily playing them both in a session, but having like multiple characters for one player.
It's difficult because I think it can be done well in the sense that like you can have them sort of interact differently with the community and do different things, and you can roleplay them differently and do that well. while not taking too much attention away from other people. But I also think it's got downsides in the fact that I think realistically most players won't play them that way. They'll sort of like use them as either a backup or as someone just to play in between playing their main character, or like I sort of noticed it with was it
Eugene?
whoever had the lobster guy?
Eugene, yeah.
That guy was pretty much doomed to death. Like, he came into the world and he was like, he just had like a death mark above his head, and I was there looking at him like, oh.
Yeah. Grove.
And that's sort of like, I can understand it, you know. People are more interested in the person that they've got more time invested in.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't really mind if people want to use a character as a meat shield or something. You know, that's fine. It's just like
okay, I'm gonna rejoin the next session with like 50 alt characters.
Well, within reason, you know. If you turn up with like, yeah, I've got 10 characters this week, and they all form a perfect circle around Little is the Gazelle, who's just in the centre drinking flies' blood.
And they love him, and they want him to be the chief.
I mean, like, the idea being is that if you have like multiple characters, they'll specialise in different things, and so
yeah, for sure,
collectively decide like, what do we need to get out of this, like whatever mission you've selected for yourself to go on. It's like, oh, we want to head up into the mountains, go into the cave, find so and so, extract them, and we're going to need people who are particularly stealthy, or you know, we're going to need these particular set of skills. Where if you're going down to like negotiate with the village, you're going to need someone who can put on a bit of a song and a dance and speak well, and you know, play some good tunes on the flute, that kind of thing.
And I think it can definitely be done well. And I'd say like an example of it doing pretty decently was what was his name? The big tough guy that we had in our group at one point towards the.
Yeah, so it was Semioti's other character, Garnish.
Yeah, like his two characters were quite different from one another, realistically.
Yeah.
And I thought he played them well differently. And I thought, you know, even though I didn't play many sessions with Garnish, I thought there was definitely room for growth here. Like, there's like a decent foundation. He's not just like, he's not wanting him to just be killed. They're quite different characters.
Yeah.
Like, there's room for a backstory here. There's room for growth, and yeah, they do different things.
Yeah. Well, this is some interesting stuff. I appreciate. I'm certainly thinking a lot about the idea of you know, the individual development is something I, you know. Because I think that there's like part of me that just wants to keep it as it is, because that's sort of the point of it. But also there's a thing of like, I think people are more inspired usually by being able to, you know, see a quantifiable development in their character, like on a regular basis, as a reward for the scrapes that their character goes through, and sort of like like improving your dexterity from 9 to 10 after 3 weeks of play or something might not really feel very satisfying. I get that, but like
and the effects that realistically has on your character are pretty minimal. Sure,
and that's the thing. And it's just kind of like I guess it's just like I'm doing the thing of where I just think everyone just needs to change their attitude, and I don't need to change, and that's wrong, isn't it?
The kids are wrong, not me.
The world is wrong. They just need to change their approach, and then they'll understand.
It's that Principal Skinner, isn't it?
Yeah. Could it be that? Is it be that I'm wrong and the children are right? No.
Yeah, it's this one. Am I out of touch? No, it's the children who are wrong.
Yeah, absolutely that.
I think that's a relic of like first edition, and I think people like it, which sort of makes it tough to deal with in a way.
Yeah, but that it's been awesome to get so much like high quality feedback, and then for you to come back as well and chat about it. and allow yourself to be recorded, and also to give me that £1,000 as well. That was really good of you. All of those things were just like.
I thought you were giving me the £1,000.
What do you mean? This is like free airtime on my 7 listener podcast that I.
Hello, 7 listeners.
Yeah, that was the last time I posted anything on it, which is a long time ago. Do you have anything to promote? Actually, that's what they do on these types of things. Have you got any? Do you have a MySpace account?
Not particularly, I don't think. Most of my stuff is pretty private with friends.
That's the good way.
If you're a fan of like Neolithic games that are ran really well by a great GM who's always trying to improve, I think you should give Sofinho a go and turn up regularly to his sessions, because he's a pretty cool guy, and I know a lot of other people would have probably reacted a lot worse to the message I sent, when realistically he was very nice about it.
You can have that. It's £500 now. I've reduced it. Is that okay?
Thank you. Yeah.
I didn't really feel it at the end there. I felt like.
Can you let my family go?
One at a time. Yeah.
Well, okay.
So who do you love the most?
You? Question mark?
What? Of your family, of course me. But after that.
After that.
Don't answer that question. That could be controversial. Like further down the line, might affect your inheritance. I don't know. I'll let your family go. Sure, why not? It's nearly Christmas time, and all the holidays. Awesome. And I was going to say as well, but you said you might be up for doing like the odd one shot now and then if something came up, a special event or adventure, if the stars align in such a way.
Like, for certain, like, definitely one shot. I just, I don't really want to commit to...
No. I'm not trying... I worded it very carefully. I said you might be up for... just your response then just filled me with loads of optimism, so...
No, I feel like I've enjoyed all your one-shots that you've done, including the Spire one-shot wink.
Yeah.
Which was a bit longer.
The triple... was it 3? Triple-barreled?
Might have been 4, to be honest.
Yeah, in the end.
I'm not sure. But, yeah, I want to agree and say I'll definitely show up, but at the same time I'm like, I don't know what's going to be happening in the future.
I
don't know how busy I'll be. I've run like a Christmas special thing before for my players, and I might do one this year. I'm thinking about doing one.
Yeah, I've not got anything planned for the future. I'm mostly just staying out of stuff at the moment, apart from the Saturday game. So it was just, and I'm not gonna. I just sound more and more desperate the more I try and excuse myself. Why don't you tell us about?
No, I think it's fine.
Your Christmas special. What do you do for a Christmas special session?
Well, the last one I did was called Crockett Night, and it was like sort of Terry Pratchett-y, where it was like a big festival. But they all gathered around this tower in the city, and it was sort of like celebrating new beginnings and the end of the end of the old and the end with the new. And then someone was pushed from the tower and hit the ground and was murdered. And it was sort of like an adventure mystery of finding out who was murdered and who murdered.
That's an interesting approach to the whodunit. Who was done?
Who was done?
Yeah. But yeah.
I mean, to be fair, I might use that in the future now because that does sound interesting.
Yeah. Well, that sounds great. And if you do have any plans for another Christmas one, why don't you come back on the show and tell us all about it when I next record? But seriously, what I'll do is I'll send you the audio from this and then like the edit, because I might put some stuff on at the beginning, at the end, and also chop it up so it's just you insulting yourself over and over again.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense. That's what I'd do.
Yeah, just so I can get your full approval. But yeah, awesome. Thanks, Alex, so much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I'll see you on the servers.
Yeah, if you want to adapt it, if you want to adapt PARIAH to Baby 5e, think about the thing I said about spirits and how they could influence
what?
Different classes and set of theme.
Yeah.
I don't know how well that fits into first edition though, to be fair. So.
Yeah, no, I mean like a 5e version. Yeah, like a
I mean, you sell more realistically.
It's not about selling. It's not about the money.
I mean, it's always about the money a bit. Come on, guys. Let's be real.
I think there's easier ways to make money than DIY RPG.
Without a doubt.
Anyway, it's been wicked, and really appreciate your time, and enjoy your weekend, man. I'll catch you soon.
Yeah. Thanks for being such a cool dude. See you later, man.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.